At first glance, the 2025 Belgian Grand Prix weekend looked like a forgettable chapter in Lewis Hamilton's storied Formula One career. A double Q1 exit, a pit lane start, and a finish well outside the top five doesn't scream redemption story. If you only look at the final results, or if you caught just the highlights, you might have written this off as one of those weekends where nothing went right. But dig a little deeper, and a more nuanced story begins to emerge. One that speaks to the resilience of a seven-time world champion, the unpredictability of sprint weekends, the challenges of implementing upgrades in limited time, and even the early signs of a potential resurgence. Not just for Hamilton, but for Ferrari as a whole. Jolyon Palmer, a former F1 driver turned analyst, put it best when he said this weekend wasn't as bad as it looked on the surface. And honestly, he's right. There's a lot to unpack here. And once you do, you realize that Lewis Hamilton's Belgian GP weekend might actually be more encouraging than it is disappointing. Hamilton came into Spa-Francorchamps on the back of some promising results. After Ferrari introduced a floor upgrade back in Austria, he had been looking more competitive, scoring consecutive fourth-place finishes and finally seeming to gel with the car. Spa is also a track where he's had historic success. He won here just last season. So expectations weren't exactly low. That made what happened on Friday and Saturday all the more deflating. Exiting both qualifying sessions in Q1 was, to be blunt, a gut punch. For context, it's important to understand the challenges Ferrari faced coming into this weekend. They brought a significant rear suspension upgrade to Spa, a move aimed at allowing the SF25 to run lower to the ground and unlock a setup window closer to what they achieved back in China, where they were dominant in the sprint. That sounds great on paper, but here's the catch. Spa was a sprint weekend, which means there's just 1 hour of free practice before cars are locked in a park for May. That leaves teams with little room for experimentation or fine-tuning. When you're trying to integrate a major upgrade, that's a massive limitation. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur understood the risks, but chose to push forward anyway, reasoning that the earlier the team gathers data on new parts, the better. In the long run, that makes sense. But it also meant that Friday's qualifying session became a kind of high-stakes experiment, and one that didn't go well for Hamilton. Lewis struggled with the rear end of the car during sprint qualifying. At Stavelot, he experienced significant oversteer, which ruined what was shaping up to be a decent lap. Then, in a more dramatic moment at the bus stop chicane, he spun after locking the rear brakes. But here's the thing, pace wasn't the problem. In fact, Hamilton's initial sector times were quicker than teammate Charles Leclerc's. On another day, with just a bit more rear grip or a cleaner execution, he could have comfortably advanced. His final lap, had it not ended in a spin, would have likely been enough. Afterwards, Hamilton explained that a mechanical change made to the car's braking system for the weekend increased the risk of rear locking, something that naturally clashes with his driving style. Lewis is known for his aggressive corner entries and late braking, so a setup that doesn't accommodate that can throw off his rhythm significantly, especially when there's no time to adjust across the weekend. Saturday's traditional qualifying was a fresh chance to reset, but that too ended in frustration. Hamilton was the only driver to have a lap deleted for cutting Rydillon, a mistake that cost him dearly. By cutting the top of that iconic section, he tried to carry more speed through Eau Rouge and gain time on the Kimmel Straight. But the rules are clear. At least one wheel must remain on the white line. Lewis, with all his experience, should have known better. He admitted fault afterwards, calling it a costly error. That moment, more than anything else, symbolized the story of his weekend. Potential squandered by small but significant mistakes. Yet despite all that, Hamilton still managed to salvage something on Sunday. With rain expected and grip levels uncertain, Ferrari made the bold decision to pull him from his low grid position and change his setup to add more downforce. That meant a pit lane start, but the team hoped the higher downforce configuration would give him an advantage in the wet. For a while it did. Although the start was delayed and the track dried quickly, Hamilton made good use of the early conditions. He looked more like his old self, carving through the field with precision and confidence. At one point, he cleared 3 cars within the span of a lap and a half. It was the kind of driving that reminded people of why he's been called a rainmaster, especially in a season where he struggled in wet conditions. Think back to Melbourne, Miami, or even Silverstone, where he looked tentative and out of sync with the car. This time, the confidence was back. It showed again when the track was ready for slicks. Hamilton was the first driver to switch, coming in on lap 11. That early call was made possible thanks to solid communication between him and his race engineer, Riccardo Adami. In contrast to Silverstone, where his outlap on slicks was poor and nearly cost him a podium shot, Spa saw a composed and rapid transition. He gained a full 11 seconds over the group he had been chasing and flew through Eau Rouge with around 30 kilometers per hour more speed than Liam Lawson, easily overtaking on the Kemmel Straight. Of course, the downside of that high downforce setup became more apparent as the track dried further. Once the initial advantage faded, Hamilton began to struggle in the dirty air behind cars, unable to make further progress. Still, the work he had done early in the race had put him well into the points, and a 7th-place finish was a respectable recovery given the circumstances. From a pure results perspective, 6 points on a sprint weekend is far from ideal. For someone of Hamilton's caliber, and for a team like Ferrari fighting for every position in the Constructors' Championship, it's not what they hoped for. But it would be a mistake to judge this weekend solely by the finishing order. When you zoom in on the details, the underlying pace, the impact of the new upgrades, the missed opportunities, and the flashes of vintage Lewis, it starts to look like a foundation being laid for something more. And let's not forget that the challenges Hamilton faced weren't entirely of his own making. Integrating new parts on a sprint weekend is a risky game. Mechanical changes that don't align with a driver's natural style can have outsized consequences when there's no time to adapt. Even simple track limits errors can become decisive in a season where margins are razor thin. That's why, as we head toward Hungary, there's genuine reason for optimism. Budapest has always been a strong circuit for Hamilton. Ferrari will also have more time to analyze and refine their upgrade package during a conventional weekend, with 3 full practice sessions and more setup freedom. The problems that hurt Hamilton in Belgium, rear instability, brake locking, lack of confidence in the wet, can all be addressed more easily under a normal weekend format. If Ferrari can take what they've learned from Spa and translate that into a more stable, responsive car for Hungary, then Hamilton could be right back in the mix. And if he cuts out the minor errors, the track limits mistake, the oversteer moments, then his natural pace, which was evident throughout the Belgian weekend in small bursts, could finally shine over a full race distance. It's also worth noting that this is not an isolated case of better than it looked for Hamilton this season. We've seen other weekends where his results haven't told the full story. But now, as the upgrades begin to come together and the driver regains his footing, we may be entering a stretch of the season where everything starts to align. In the bigger picture, this weekend was a reminder of how quickly narratives in Formula One can shift. One day you're out in Q1, the next you're overtaking half the field in the rain. It's part of what makes the sport so compelling. For Hamilton and Ferrari, the Belgian Grand Prix may not have delivered the big headline moment they wanted, but it planted the seeds for a stronger second half of the season. And for fans paying close attention, not just to lap times, but to the context around them, there was a lot to be encouraged by. This wasn't a disaster. It was a work in progress, a snapshot of a champion adjusting, learning, and starting to push the limits again. And that, more than the 6 points on paper, is what truly matters moving forward. So as we look ahead, don't count Hamilton out. His Belgian GP weekend wasn't perfect, but hidden within the struggles were clear signs of momentum. And if we've learned anything over the years, it's that momentum in Formula One can snowball very quickly. With a bit more time, a bit more refinement, and a driver who clearly still has the hunger and the speed, the comeback might already be underway. All you have to do is look beyond the results and see the story that's really unfolding. Hello, McLaren faithful. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss any McLaren and F1 updates with relaxing ASMR elements. Your support helps this incredible community grow stronger every day, and it's a small effort that goes a long way. Even if you can't contribute in other ways, it's completely free to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to keep the conversation going and share our passion for McLaren and F1. Your support helps keep the community thriving. Thank you for being part of McLaren Faithful.